Ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it again with another tier list video. NFL tier list to be specific. We've done running backs, we've done coaches, we've done quarterbacks, so it only makes sense to now do wide receivers. We're just keeping on. We're just continually moving along here. I always have fun with these. You guys seem to really like these, so why not continue on and do wide receivers next? Now, here's the thing though. The previous tier lists, each team had one representative, one coach, one starting quarterback, obviously, one main starting running back. But now we move on to wide receivers, and there's definitely more than one prominent receiver on most teams. So yeah, definitely compared to other tier lists, this one is long.
That's what she said.
So guys, we don't have as much time to elaborate on these individual players. We're going to just try to go as fast as we can. I mean, we're going to try a little bit, but we can't spend that much time explaining our decisions. But with that being said, I'm still going to try to put everyone where I honestly think they belong right now in each tier, but I just can't. I don't have the time. This would be like 3 hours long. You guys have lives. I have a life. We can't be here forever. So we're going to try to make this as long as previous videos. Of course, as always, make sure to comment your opinions. I love to hear them. So without further ado, here is my wide receiver tier list. We're going to just go in the order in which we are presented this tier list of players randomly. We're starting with Antonio Brown. Oh, I don't know if he's going to play again this year, but we're going to put him, when he plays, he's a solid B. I think he's the third receiver on the team, but he still has a lot of game left when he does play. Still a great deep threat, but we need a few more players. Maybe we can move some of these players around after the fact, but I think A and S is moving towards like the best receiver on a team, and I don't think he's good enough to be the best on a team. Then we move on to Adam Thielen, who is currently the second receiver on the Vikings, but he would be the first receiver on a lot of teams, I would say. Just a touchdown machine. So for that, I would say he's in the A tier. I think he's a little better than Antonio Brown right now. I think he's going to get around 15, 16 touchdowns this year, just like he did last year. Then we move on to A.J. Brown, who was great the last 2 years for the Titans. Clearly their best receiver. Obviously, this year's been a down year mostly because of the fact that he's been hurt. But with that being said, when he does play, I still think he's an A-tier receiver. We move on to Allen Lazard, who is, if he is the second receiver on the Packers, he's one of the more disappointing second receivers. I don't know how the Packers do it with just one great receiver. C or D? C or D? I'm going to put him in D for now because we're talking about compared to the rest of these receivers on this list, he's not elite. He sometimes lays eggs. Actually, quite often he'll lay something closely resembling an egg, so I don't really like Allen Lazard anywhere higher than D. Allen Robinson, from one Allen to another, he's had a really disappointing year, but I love me some Allen Robinson. He will be a free agent this offseason, and if he has any brain cells, he will move on from the Bears and find at least a halfway decent quarterback connection with someone else, because clearly Justin Fields isn't working out. I want to say he's in the A tier, but because of we got to have some recency bias. I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think that's where he belongs right now, but most of the time, A tier, maybe even has the talent to be in the S tier, but we'll see. Then we move on to Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, been a super solid, really good receiver for a long time now. Maybe isn't the best on his team anymore with CeeDee Lamb being a thing, being existent, but I still think he's an A tier receiver. Then we move on to, is this Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys? Help me. I think it is. If it's not, I'll edit in who it is, but I'm pretty sure it is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he gets Allen Lazard treatment. Put in the D tier, baby. Compared to the other guys, again, he's not a bad receiver. None of these receivers are bad. These guys are all good because they're on this list. They're one of the top 2 receivers on their team. I assume that's how this list is working. But compared to the rest, he's in the D tier. Then we move on to Brandon Cooks, who's one of the more underrated receivers in the league, I would say, because the Texans, no one watches them. No one should want to watch them or should watch them at all. But yeah, underrated, gets a ton of targets, really is the only good receiver on that team. Definitely a solid B tier. Then we move on to Brandon Ayuk, who went to ASU, like this guy. And so I'm gonna try not to be biased, but I think he's a really good receiver. Right now, I would say he's a B tier because he's not the best receiver on his team, but really solid. Had a rough beginning of the year, but is coming back very nicely as of late. Then we have, I believe, who is this, guys? Is this Russell Gage? I want to say that's Russell Gage. If that's Russell Gage, we'll give him a solid C tier. He's been really good recently. And so he gets a lot of targets, but just hasn't done enough to really be in the same tier as, like, the Antonio Browns, more established receivers in the B tier, but a solid C tier. Calvin Ridley, coming into this year, might have been an S tier, but because he stepped away from the game, hasn't played, I'll still be nice. I'll put him in the A tier because when he plays, he's fantastic. But, if you're not going to play, you can't be in the S tier right now. CeeDee Lamb will be in S tier one of these days. One of these years, he's very soon, I think he'll be in the S tier. Right now, he's a solid A tier alongside Amari Cooper. Terrific player. Great draft pick by the Cowboys. Chase Claypool, he's had a rough last week, of course. Obviously, you guys know what happened against the Vikings. First, he commits the 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct. Then he kills 90 hours of clock by just kneeling and just pointing, just not terrible time awareness. For that, does he move down? Not really. I'm going to put him in the C tier. I think that's where he was before. He's solid. He's a good receiver, obviously, but compared to the rest, I would say he's in the C tier. Chris Godwin is an excellent receiver. Do we have our first S tier? I think we do. I think he's the best receiver on the Bucs. The last 2 weeks, he's been out of his mind. Had 13 catches this past week, I think, and then 15 the week, something like that. 15, 13, just a ton of catches. And him and Mike Evans, they're just toe for toe, just super. I think he's an elite receiver, our first S tier. Then we have Deontay Johnson, who is notably known for dropping a bunch of balls, but he's a target hog, been reliable and consistent all year. He's a really good receiver. I think he's a solid A tier. Then we move on to, is this Christian Kirk? I think it is. I'm going to put him in the C tier. Doesn't get targeted that much, so for that reason, I think he's in the C tier. Then we have Cole Beasley, who's always reliable, gets a good amount of catches, but compared to who's on here, I would say he's in the C tier, but is reliable and a solid second receiver. Then we have our second S tier with Cooper Kupp, who is, by any offensive metric you want to look at, he's been the best wide receiver in football this year, just having a true breakout year. Unbelievable chemistry with Matthew Stafford, no doubt about it. Then we have Mr. Corey Davis, who has been a bust for most of his career. Has he been disappointed? I'm going to put him in the D tier again. Compared to the rest of these receivers, I don't even think he's the number one receiver on his team anymore. I think that's Elijah Moore, so he's been disappointing his entire career, so why not just be a little more continually disappointing on this tier list. Cortland Sutton, who looked to be coming on as one of the better receivers in football at the beginning of the year, he's declined. Jerry Judy's kind of taken his place, so for that reason, he's still a decent deep threat. I would put him in the C tier. Then we move on to, who is this? Terry McLaurin? Is this Terry McLaurin? Hang on, no it's not. Wait. Who is this? Curtis Samuel? I think that's Curtis Samuel. He hasn't played this year, so we're going to put him in the D tier. Darnell Mooney has surprisingly emerged as the number one receiver on the Bears. Therefore, I think he's a solid B tier. Despite lackluster quarterback play for most of the year, he's been a really good deep threat. He's been catching a lot of balls and been a solid receiver most of the year. Then we move on to who I think is the best receiver in football, and that is Davante Adams. He's a deep threat. He can catch short passes, slant passes, perfect size for a receiver, a good 6'1", touchdowns, catches, yards, everything you could want in a great receiver. He has it all around the best receiver in football, I think, in my opinion, no doubt about it. Debo Samuel, a surprising breakout receiver this year. I think he's an S tier because if you want to combine if you just want to talk about his production, he's 1/3 running back, 2/3 receiver, whatever he is, he's a beast, and he's been having so many monster games this year. I think he's moved all the way up till S tier, up to the S tier. Then we have, is this Traequan Smith? All right, all the Saints receivers are going in D. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it right now. Who else is on the Saints? One of these is Marquez Callaway, and one of these is Traequan Smith. They're both going in D because the Saints, they don't pass the ball. This year, it's just, they just decided, let's just not pass the ball. They're both going in the D tier. Then we have Devontae Parker, who pretty much hasn't played a lick this year, moving into the C tier, still solid when he plays, maybe better than C tier, but he hasn't been healthy, and he's disappointed my fantasy team. I'm still upset about that, so he's staying in the D tier. Then we move on to Devonta Smith, who's had a solid rookie season, even despite having Jalen Hurts not be a great passer. I think he's a decent B tier receiver. I think he's solid. I'll just keep him in B tier. I think he's solid. DJ Chark. I had a lot of hopes for DJ Chark this year. 2 years ago, he had a breakout year. The last 2 years have been injury-filled. They've been bad. And DJ Chark, unfortunately for the receivers on this list, is in the D tier, but has the talent to, when he's healthy, with some good quarterback play, which we haven't been seeing in Jacksonville, Hopefully he plays better in the future, but for now he's in the D tier. Then we have DJ Moore. I think one of the more underrated receivers in the game. I think he's a no doubt A tier. I mean, he's had Cam Newton, PJ Walker, and Sam Darnold as his QB this year. Despite that, still getting a ton of catches and a very good amount of yards. And the last 2 years, well over 1,000 yards. Really underrated player. DK Metcalf, I might have said S tier coming into this year because last year he was fantastic, a true breakout year. But this year he's been a little disappointing. But despite that, we're going to still put him in the A tier because he's DK Metcalf. He's a freak of nature and still a beast, okay? He's going to have a great career. All right? Emmanuel Sanders. He might be the number 2 receiver on the Bills, kind of like the Cole Beasley level, but he can be the 2A to Cole Beasley's 2B or vice versa. I'm going to put him in the C tier. He's solid. He's a good deep threat, but again, compared to the rest, I don't think he's above the C tier. I don't think he's as good as the B tier receivers. Then we have Henry Ruggs. Hang on. All right, so Henry Ruggs is there. And then we have Hollywood Brown. Let's see. He's had a nice semi-breakout year. I think he's in the A tier. I think he's good enough to be the best receiver on a playoff team, which he currently is. The Ravens will be making the playoffs. So Hunter Renfro is underrated because he's always been a good, reliable catching receiver. Gets a ton of passes and targets. Reliable slot receiver. But this year, especially recently, in Darren Waller's absence, he's really impressed me and a lot of people. No, I'm going to put him in the B tier, but really solid. I like me some Renfro. All right, some of these receivers, I'm sorry, I can't recognize them by face. I want to say this is Jacoby Myers. It's either Jacoby Myers or Kendrick Bourne. I'm sorry, one of these is Kendrick Bourne and one of these is Jacoby. I'm going to assume this is Jacoby Myers. It doesn't matter. Patriots, sorry. Your receiving core, it's not that good. We're going to put them both in D tier. I hate to say it. Mac Jones is doing a decent job, and these guys are pretty good receivers, but compared to the rest, they don't get a lot of production out of the receivers. They're a run-first team. Hunter Henry, they get a lot of tight end targets, especially this year. I just don't see it. I don't see the receivers being higher than D. Then we have Jalen Rhaegar. I think this is Jalen Rhaegar. Again, some of these guys, they wear helmets, can't recognize them by face. If it is Jalen Rhaegar, yeah, he's also going to go in D tier because other than Devonta Smith, I don't think any other Eagles receiver deserves to be higher than D tier. Then we have Jamar Chase, who's had a great rookie season. Is he in the S tier or the A tier? I'm going to put him in the A tier, but could very well be an S by the end of the season or very soon. Jamison Crowder plays on the Jets, which automatically docks him like 3 tiers at least. So, D tier. I'm sorry. He's not even the number 1 receiver on the team. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry, he's always just pretty solid. Is he B tier? Sure, we'll put him in the B tier. He's been pretty decent recently. Jalen Waddle swarms the ball from Tua. He gets a ton of targets, ton of catches, having a great rookie season, and kind of forgotten about in the mix of wide receivers, but having a really nice year. Is he in the A tier? He's a B tier. Solid B tier. You know what? Having a really nice year. Jerry Judy, I don't think he's quite B tier yet, but I think he's got a good future. I think he's better than Cortland Sutton, but I don't think he's good enough to be in a higher tier than him, but still solid and good. Juju Smith-Schuster, man, this guy's declined a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean maybe a lot. He's injured right now, and I think he's with Chase Claypool in the C tier. Then we move on to Julio Jones, who's going to be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done in all likelihood. But is it fair to say he's anything higher than C at this point? It's not. I mean, he's C tier. I'm sorry. Like, he's been injured. When he has played, it's just not working out in Tennessee. I don't think right now, this is not the career resume. It's right now where you ranked compared to the rest of the guys on the tier list. I don't see him higher than C. Then we have Justin Jefferson, who is the present and the future of the NFL wide receiver position. Love this guy. 2 years in the NFL, 2 phenomenal S-tier quality seasons. Love Justin Jefferson. Then we have Kadarius Toney. Giant. I like him. But he's on the Giants, and the production says D tier compared to the rest of these guys. But I think he's got a bright future. Keenan Allen, really solid A-tier receiver. Love Keenan Allen. I love guys who just get you a ton of catches, usually stay healthy, and are just reliable and, good presences in the locker room. I like that. Kenny Golladay, you know what? He's had a nice little... Okay, he hasn't been great in New York, but I still think he's got a good amount of game in him. And I think he's in a higher tier than Kadarius Toney if you combine what he's done in the past and what he can do when he's healthy. So I'll put him in the C tier. Leviska Chanel. This one hurts me because I really thought he was going to be a breakout player this year. It's not all his fault because Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer really wet in the bed as a dynamic duo of horribleness on offense. On offense. So Leviska Chanel's going to get a D tier, but he's got good talent, and if we had some offensive abilities in Jacksonville, he'd be a lot better. Marvin Jones, I'll put him in the C tier. He's still been somewhat surprisingly productive on a really horrendous offensive team, just like Leviska Chanel is terrible. My Jags are terrible, okay? But Marvin Jones, really solid and still been productive. If you look at his numbers, he's putting up his somewhat usual numbers. Then we have, is this McCole Hardman? If it is, anyone other than Tyrek Hill and the Chiefs is not in a class other than D tier. They're in a class of these D tier guys compared to the rest. Michael Gallup, really solid receiver, just doesn't get a lot of run. He doesn't get targeted that much. Recently with some receiver injuries on the Cowboys, he has been. Is he in the B tier? Sure, we'll give him a B tier. I think he's really solid. And we move on to Michael Pittman, who's had a really nice breakout season. Will he someday maybe be in the A or S tier? I'm going to say yes, but right now we'll put him in the B tier, but he's been a really solid receiver. Michael Thomas, where are you? Seriously, are you going to play one of these years? 2 straight years of not playing at all. So what can I do? What can I do here? You know what? We'll put him next to Henry Ruggs. Stop lying to your team. Call your team. Talk to them. Don't go MIA, okay? It's just been too long to assess him. He once was the best receiver in football, arguably. Not anymore, okay? I just don't know where to rank him. He hasn't played in 2 years. So what am I going to do? All right, moving on to Mike Evans. Is Mike Evans S tier with Chris Godwin, or is he A tier? I think right now, Chris Godwin's... he's great in the... You know what? We'll put him in the A tier. But, man, he's close to S tier. He's great. I really like Mike Evans, especially in the red zone. Fantastic. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Marquez Valdes, D tier. Okay. He's with Alan Lazard. Look, they're both pretty good. But again, compared to the rest, he's a great deep threat, but he goes MIA some games, so we're just going to keep him in the D tier. Okay, again, I apologize. If whoever it is on the Patriots, they're going to go in the D tier. Okay, I know we have Demir? Okay, Demir Bird's not even on the Patriots, but we got Jacoby Myers, we got Kendrick Bourne, I don't know who else. I'm sorry. Patriots receivers, I'm not going to remember you, okay? DeAndre Hopkins, you know what? He was definitely an S tier coming into this year, but right now he's not playing like an S tier. I think he's in the A tier, having a great career though. Definitely can move up to S tier with a couple banger games. Definitely, I could see that happening, but right now he's in the A tier. Odell was probably C tier, but he's kind of been coming back to Odell, doing Odell-like things, somewhat resembling his past self. So I think he's earned, once again, the B tier nod. Maybe earlier this year he was a C or maybe even D tier, but he's getting back into the mix of things. Could even be higher than that a year from now. Who knows? Then we got, what's his name? Oh, Eric Pascal. I'm pretty sure that is. Yeah, I'm going to put him in the D tier because, I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Okay. Then we're going to move on. Who's the... Someone help me. Doesn't matter. D tier. You're on the Lions. Next, Randall Cobb. Okay. A D tier. I'm sorry. The Packers other than Devonta Adams, you're not effective enough. You don't have enough production to be higher. Robbie Anderson, poor guy. He was probably B tier, definitely, coming into this year. He's moved down to C tier. Hasn't been horrendous, but still been disappointing. Robert Woods, when he plays, he's a solid B tier, but he is out for the year. But we're still going to put him on there because he has played a decent amount this year before getting injured. Then we have Rondale Moore, he barely doesn't get used that much. Usage matters, okay? We're going to put him in the D tier. All right, wait, this is Russell Gage. So who was that? Who was on the Falcons? I'm sorry. Facially, some of these guys, who's that? Is that Tajay Sharp? Okay, we're putting him in D tier. Russell Gage, you're going in C tier. Whoever this is it Olamide Zacchaeus? Whoever it is, that's D tier. I will edit this in. I'll find out who that is, okay? Sammy Watkins. I'm sorry. You're just not playing. You don't play that much, okay? Mike Williams can't guard Mike. He's had a nice breakout year. Solid B tier. Having a very nice season. Could be maybe even A tier someday. So Scotty Miller, little Scotty Miller, is that him? D tier. Sorry. You're like the ninth receiver on your team, okay? Stephon Diggs. Okay, finally, we have another S tier, okay? Stephon Diggs, clear S tier. Wait, can we, hang on, sorry. This list has expanded where I have to scroll up. Put him in S tier, baby. That's an S tier receiver. Sterling Shepard. He's pretty solid. C. I don't think he's bad enough to be in D, but, you know, we'll put him in C. T. Higgins. Solid B tier. He's having a nice year, especially recently. 3 straight 100-yard weeks. I like him. Then we have Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry, one of the more underrated receivers in the league. Obvious A tier, baby. He's fantastic. Then we have Tyler Boyd. Okay. He's a really solid third. You know, I think he's a C tier. He's productive enough to avoid the D tier, and he's like the third receiver on the team. Gets the job done very nicely. Tyler Lockett, I think he's right alongside the DK Metcalfs of the world in the A tier. He's really good, terrific deep threat. So yeah, definitely A tier, having a better year than Metcalf right now. They go back and forth in terms of there's a lot of recency bias if you want to say who's better between the two. Right now, Lockett looks better. Tyreek Hill, easy. Hang on, I have to scroll up. Easy S tier, 100%. Tyreek Hill, fastest man on planet Earth. Well, if we're talking about football, fastest man in football in all likelihood. And just there's no one's ever gonna have an answer for his speed. Okay, so he's amazing. Easy S tier. And last but not least, we have the guy who just can't get healthy, Will Fuller. He would be like a B tier, but he hasn't played, so I'll put him in C tier. He's kind of moved down. Let's just put him next to Devontae Parker right there so they can be friends. All right, guys. That was a lot of talking, a lot of energy spent, but that was fun. That was a speed ranking of the top, I don't know, I want to say these are the top 60 receivers, 60 to 70. We ranked a lot of guys in the same amount of time, give or take a couple minutes, that we do our other S tier videos. So this was a lot, guys. Let me know. Comment your opinions. There's going to be a lot of them because there's a lot of players. Comment your opinions on where you agree with me, where you disagree with me. And thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you're a football fan, subscribe if you haven't already. We're closing in on 1,000 subs. I could use your help. We need your help, guys, to get there. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I might eat a nap after this, and we'll see. We'll see. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.